Okay, now I'm going to detail the 480 years for you and what the significance of this number is. Okay, it doesn't say 480 years, it says the 480th year. So we're enumerating something. It says, of the going out of the sons of Israel from Egypt. Okay, now I propose that this phrase, of the going out, okay, is a reference to the Passover memorial. Okay, what I'm talking about is the Passover offering that's a memorial of the Exodus. There were actually two Passover offerings. There's one for the Passover in Egypt, which was escape from the angel of the destroyer angel, or the messenger of destruction. And then the second offering was on the 15th day of the month, and that was to memorialize the Exodus, and that was legislated later in Deuteronomy chapter 16. So this is the 480th year of the going out of Egypt. In other words, it's the 480th year that Israel celebrated the Passover. Okay, now obviously when they were enslaved, okay, and worshiping false gods, they weren't observing the Passover as a nation. There may have been a few righteous people that did it, maybe something went on, but in God's eyes, as a nation, they were not observing the Passover. So this 480 years counts the Passovers that they observe. Okay, so let's go back in the chart here to the Exodus. There we go. If we look, where's my pointer? Okay, well, you're going to have to put up with pointing with this for a minute. Okay, this circled number here, this is the first Passover they observed in the land of Egypt. Second Passover, third Passover, fourth Passover, and so on. Okay? Then they went into idolatry with Cusham Rishathaim here for 8 years. So I have the 61st Passover, and then at the end of that, I have this, after that 8 years interruption, I have the 62nd Passover. Okay, and up to the 101st, and then again, the Passover for the nation is interrupted by Eglon, king of Moab. 102nd Passover being after him. And we continue on, counting up the Passovers which are not when they're being oppressed. Okay? This is the other explanation of the 480 years. And we find, by counting up all those Passovers, that in the 4th year of King Solomon, this would be the 480th. Now the temple was, they were rebuilding the temple on the 2nd day of the 2nd month. This was just after the 480th Passover observance. So that's the other explanation of the 480 years. Okay. Now, we'll need more of the chronology to do this later. But simultaneously, while we're counting when Israel did observe the Passover, we're counting up also the years in which they were rebelling against God, when they were into idols, and they were enslaved because they were into idolatry. Okay, so the first 8 years of Cushan, 1 through 8, we're summing up the years 1 through 8. Okay, and that fits right in between the years when they were observing the Passovers. Eglon, king of Moab, they served him for 18 years. Okay, we keep summing up the years, 9 through 26. Okay, we're summing up the years, which I would call the years of the sin of Israel. They come to a total of 46 after they served Jabin. They come to 53 after serving Midian, 53 years. They come to 56 years after serving Abimelech. They come to 74 years after serving the Ammonites. Okay? Another 40 years for the Philistines, and we're up to 114 years. Serving the Philistines again, we're up to 134 years. Okay, and of course, they didn't rebel after that for quite a period of time until we get to Rehoboam, first king of Judah in the divided kingdom. And Jeroboam led Israel into idolatry. So again, we pick up the years, counting the years of sin for Israel. Okay, so when we get to Jeroboam, in the first year of Jeroboam, we have 135 years. Right here, 135 years in which Israel sinned. And as we keep going through the chronology, we're going to see that these years of sin are going to add up to a sum total of 390. Okay? Little gap here. That's because the king of Judah was following Yahweh, and there was no king on the throne of Israel. Okay? 390 years. 390th year comes to an end with the exile of the northern kingdom. Okay, in 720 BC. So we'll get into some more details on this. Okay, and then also we have a figure for 40 years for the sin of Judah. Now at the exile of the northern kingdom, we have King Hezekiah was king of Judah. Here's Hezekiah, he was king of Judah. Okay, and he was a righteous king. However, his son Manasseh was rebellious. So we can start tallying years for the sin of Judah. Okay, but Manasseh repented somewhere in his reign, actually after 25 years of sinning. And we know that this was 25 years because Esarhaddon, we have archaeological records that say in his 10th year was when Manasseh was exiled by Esarhaddon, king of Assyria, and then restored the next year to his throne. Also, this 25 years synchronizes with the 65 years that would remove Ephraim from being a people, from being a national community. So Esarhaddon deported the remnant of Ephraim and imported other people into Samaria. Okay, then we come down, Manasseh was righteous for the rest of his reign. Then we come down to Ammon. He was wicked, 2 more years. Josiah was a righteous king. Okay, so none of his years are counted for sin of Judah. His son, Jehoahaz, he was wicked. So we start counting, and actually all the way down to the Babylonian exile. The Babylonian exile beginning with the middle deportation under Jehoiakim. So this is the sum of 40 years for the sin of Judah. Now, the rabbinic chronological piece called Seder Olam actually calculates the sin of Judah just like this. They have that right in the rabbinical chronology. And in way of summing up this segment, I would say that any chronology that cannot account for 40 years of sin for Judah and 390 years of sin for Israel is not a biblical chronology. It doesn't meet the requirements. Okay, let's look up here on the board here, and I'll introduce our next topic. Okay, Israel sinned for 390 years, and Judah sinned for 40 years. Okay, if we add these two numbers up, we get 430 years. Now, in those 430 years are all the land Sabbaths. Okay, land Sabbaths is an idea that contains both land Shabbats. Okay, I'm trying to write the H there all the time, which is a good thing. Land Shabbats, or Shabbatot. 430 years contains all the land Shabbatots that Israel did not observe. So that 7th years and Jubilee or 50th years combined. And we can show this with a simple division. Okay? 430 divided by 7 equals 61, rounding the number off, okay? In the actual charts, it's a precise whole number, okay? 430 divided by 49 equals 9. Okay, that's counting how many Jubilees would be in 430 years. We add those numbers up. We get 70. 70 is the number of years that Judah was exiled to Babylon before they were allowed to return. All right. You can cut it right there.